Hey guys, Mark here. We're rocking some James. We're now 4 days into this thing. So we're all the sightseeing tourist Bible readers, they've already dropped out. They just two of them was too much for them. So you guys are hardcore. We're 4 into this bad boy. So let's read verses 9 through 11. This is one of those sections that I read through a bunch for years, never really got it until last several years. God kind of showed me some stuff here. Check this out. Verse 9. Let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation, and let the rich person, let him boast in his humiliation. Because like a flower of the grass, he will pass away. For the sun rises with its scorching heat and withers the grass. Its flower falls and its beauty perishes. So also will the rich man fade away in the midst of his pursuits. The big chunk for us to chew on is that first verse in number 9. Let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation, but let the rich brother in his humiliation. Now, that's kind of a strange line. I've done a little studying on it, and I've heard some really smart guys talk about it. What was going on at the time that James was written was that the rich were very different from the poor, way more than you would even think. The rich at the time were figuring out ways to take the poor to court and take even more of their money from them. Nowadays, we would say they were messing with them with lawyers and fine print and contracts and tricking them in and out of stuff. And it got so bad that several years after James was written, there was actually a bit of a civil war in this area with the poor and the rich, and the poor just came at them, right? So it's a tough thing. So now you've got this little house church where you got some rich people who are saved and some poor people who are saved, and they're showing up together to the same church, right? Just like in our day, when I was a kid, it was racism. Everybody's racist outside of church. Well, what do we do when we get in church? Luckily, I was in one of those churches that everybody could just come to, and it was beautiful because we would read verses that say, love your brother, and you see other churches that weren't loving their brothers. And I was in a church that said, come on, what the Bible says, we're actually going to try this, and it was awesome. So here in this church, you've got rich folks and poor folks together, and what might have been happening is the rich people, since they had a lot of money, figured maybe their opinion counted a little bit more than the poor people. So maybe they weren't really listening to the poor people, right? Because the trap you can fall into when you're rich, the trap is, I'm independent, I made myself, I can do this myself. A trap of the rich is, I don't need anybody else's help. I've got a lot of money, so I've got a lot of smarts, so I should be more important. So there's pride, yeah? Now, the problem with the poor is the trap of the poor is they can be bitter, and they can start thinking, who are these people think they are? And they're mad and jealous because they don't have the things that they need, so they start getting bitter towards the ones who are older. They can start feeling like they deserve help even if they work for it or not. There's a lot of traps you can fall in when you're in a lowly place, because your heart can turn hard and you can just feel like the little guy complex, like you got to prove yourself all the time. So you've got rich people in a trap and poor people in a trap. So what he's telling them is, if you're in a low place, right, you need to understand that God has made you, and you're not low in God's eyes because you have little money. You're high because of what God's done in you. And if you're in a high place with money, you need to lower yourself. You need to be humble. Now, some of you have already trailed off, and you need to go back and watch that again, because this matters. Because maybe right now you're thinking, hey, I'm 15, I don't know about this rich, poor, none of this mess. Yeah, but you've been on a baseball team before, and you've been in a class before, and you've been in a situation where you were in a high position, and you've been in a situation where you're in a low position. When you're the top one in the class, or the one that's been on the team the longest, or the senior, or whatever you want to call it, you're in a high place in a class situation or a work, you've been there working there longer than anybody else, you can start thinking a little bit more of yourself than you should. You start looking down on the new guy, looking down on the one that doesn't have as much talent, looking down on the one that never gets to play, or the new kid, and just kind of giving them a hard time. You see it happen all the time. Everybody gives the new kid, the new person, a hard time. Well, what you need to do, if you find yourself in a high position in your class, on your team, at your school, you need to make yourself a servant and go meet the people that don't have the influence or the talent or whatever you have. You need to lower yourself and serve them and humble yourself. If you find yourself being in a low position, meaning you're the new guy that doesn't know your way around, you're the new person on the team, or you're in a place where everyone could look down on you, you don't need to become bitter and mad, because a lot of times we'll do that in friendships. Well, I'm the new guy, so they're probably not going to like me, so I'm not even going to care. I'm going to walk in like, I don't care what anybody thinks. We put all these walls up, and we don't want to hear from anybody, when really we're just scared they're not going to like us, so we're not going to give them the chance to mistreat us. Well, that's being in a low position and being in a trap to where you can't open yourself up and let somebody love you and see that God's made you who you are. So this one's a little more complicated, but it really does apply to us. Anytime you find yourself in a high position of influence, lower yourself and love people. Anytime that you find yourself in a low position, let yourself understand through wisdom that we prayed for and the joy that we asked for Him to show us and give to us. Let us see that we aren't in a low position at all because of who God's made us. I hope that helps a little bit. Read through that again and ask God to show you what He has to say to you, and we'll start again tomorrow.